Tiểu Lạc, Tiểu Lạc, cô đang ở đâu?
So heavy. Finally. I can't do anymore. I can't do anymore.
I really appreciate you taking care of me.
You're welcome.
Hello, dear viewers. In today's story, we follow Tieu Lac, a young woman enduring exhausting days as she struggles to repay her adoptive parents' debts. She works tirelessly, surviving on very little, pushing herself closer and closer to her physical limits just to keep going. Somewhere else, the CEO has never forgotten her. He searches for Tieu Lac in quiet desperation, walking through countless streets, holding on to hope through repeated disappointments, wishing only that she is safe and at peace wherever she may be. Their lives pass so close to one another, close enough to almost touch, yet fate has not allowed their reunion. If you enjoy emotional, heartfelt stories about love, sacrifice, and destiny, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like this video to support us. Your support means everything and motivates us to continue bringing you more touching and meaningful stories. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Tieu Lac was living through the hardest days of her life. Days that felt endlessly heavy, as if the weight of the world had quietly settled onto her fragile shoulders. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, she forced herself out of bed, even when her body screamed for rest. Her only motivation was a single, unwavering purpose: to earn enough money to help her adoptive parents repay the debt that haunted their household like a dark shadow. That debt was not hers to carry, yet she carried it willingly, silently, without complaint. She worked wherever she could find work. Long hours, exhausting tasks, low pay, none of it mattered to her anymore. What mattered was surviving another day, earning another small amount, moving one step closer to easing her parents' burden. Her hands grew rough, her back ached constantly, and her legs trembled with fatigue by the end of each shift. Still, she never allowed herself to stop. Rest felt like a luxury she could not afford. As the days passed, her body slowly weakened. Sleep became shallow and restless, often interrupted by anxious thoughts about money, deadlines, and unpaid bills. Her face grew thinner, her cheeks hollow, and her eyes lost their former brightness. Yet Tieu Lac never spoke of her pain. She swallowed her exhaustion the same way she swallowed her hunger, quietly, with resignation. Food was no longer something she enjoyed. It was merely a means to stay alive. Most days, she survived on a piece of dry bread, sometimes shared with a cup of water. On slightly better days, she managed to find a few boiled cassava roots or sweet potatoes, eating them slowly to make the feeling of fullness last longer. She learned how to ignore the constant ache in her stomach, how to silence the dizziness that came when she stood up too fast. Hunger became a familiar companion, one she walked beside every single day. Despite her worsening condition, Tieu Lac continued to push herself beyond her limits. There were moments when her vision blurred while she worked, when her hands shook uncontrollably, when her heart raced without warning. Even then, she told herself to endure just a little longer. She believed that pain was temporary, that sacrifice was necessary, and that as long as her parents were safe, her suffering had meaning. At night, when she finally returned to her small, empty room, silence wrapped around her like a cold blanket. She would sit on the edge of her bed, counting the money she had earned that day, calculating how much she could send home. Every bill, every coin represented another hour of her life spent in exhaustion. Yet, instead of sadness, she felt a strange sense of relief because it meant she was still holding on. Sometimes, in those quiet moments, memories would surface. a gentler past, a time when she smiled more easily, when her heart had room for warmth and hope. But she pushed those thoughts away quickly. Nostalgia was dangerous. It weakened her resolve, reminded her of things she could no longer have. Right now, survival was her only priority. Even as her strength faded, Tieu Lac never lost her determination. There was a quiet courage in the way she endured, a silent resilience that did not seek recognition or praise. She did not ask why her life had become this difficult, nor did she blame anyone for her fate. She simply accepted it, believing that enduring hardship was part of her journey. Deep inside, beneath layers of exhaustion and pain, there remained a fragile spark of hope. She told herself that these days would not last forever, that someday the debt would be paid, that someday she would be able to breathe freely again. Until then, she would keep going, even if it meant walking on the edge of collapse, because giving up was never an option for Tieu Lac. While Tiolac struggled to survive each day in silence, the CEO lived with a different kind of pain, one that came not from hunger or exhaustion, but from absence. Since the day she disappeared from his life, an emptiness had taken root in his heart, quietly consuming him. No matter how busy his days became, no matter how many meetings he attended or decisions he made, her image never left him. She lingered in his thoughts like an unfinished sentence, a question without an answer. He had searched for her from the very beginning. At first, he believed it would be easy. With his resources, his connections, and his influence, surely finding one woman would not be impossible. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and every lead led only to disappointment. Each failure chipped away at his confidence, forcing him to confront a truth he never wanted to accept, that money and power could not control fate. The city became his silent witness. He walked through crowded streets where countless faces passed by him, each one briefly stirring hope, only to let it die seconds later. Every woman with a familiar silhouette made his heart skip a beat. Every fleeting resemblance pulled him deeper into longing. He learned the painful habit of looking twice, sometimes 3 times, just to be sure, and every time the same emptiness returned. At night, when the world finally slowed down, his longing grew louder. He would stand by the window of his office or his home, staring out at the distant lights, wondering where she was at that exact moment. Was she safe? Was she warm? Was she eating properly? These questions tormented him endlessly, with no answers to ease his mind. The thought that she might be suffering somewhere alone was more unbearable than not knowing where she was at all. Despite the growing despair, he refused to give up. He sent people to search in neighboring cities, checked hospitals, shelters, and workplaces. He followed rumors, investigated sightings, and traced every possible path she might have taken. Each new piece of information reignited his hope, even if it ended in heartbreak. To him, hope was both a blessing and a curse, but it was the only thing keeping him moving forward. There were moments when exhaustion overwhelmed him, not physically, but emotionally. He questioned himself in the quiet hours of the night. Had he failed her? Had he missed a chance to protect her, to keep her by his side? Regret settled heavily on his chest, making it difficult to breathe. If only he could turn back time, he would hold on tighter, speak more gently, love more openly. But the past remained unforgivingly out of reach. Still, his love for her never faded. It transformed, from confidence into patience, from certainty into faith. He no longer searched with urgency alone, but with a quiet devotion. He learned to wait, to endure uncertainty, to accept that love sometimes meant hoping from a distance. Even when his search led him nowhere, he continued, believing that as long as he did not stop looking, she was not truly lost. In the depths of his heart, there was a single, unwavering wish. He did not ask for grand reunions or miracles. He only prayed that somewhere, Under the same sky, Tieu Lac was alive and well, that she was not broken by the world's cruelty, that one day, when fate finally decided to be kind, their paths would cross again, not by chance, but by destiny. Until that day came, he would keep searching, through the noise of the city, through the silence of unanswered questions, through every false hope and quiet disappointment. Because loving Tieu Lac was not something he could abandon, it was a promise he carried with him, wherever his search might lead. The moment arrived without warning, slipping into his life like a sudden breath held too long. It was an ordinary afternoon, the city alive with noise and movement, when his eyes caught sight of a familiar figure in the distance. She was walking through the crowd with her head slightly lowered, her steps unhurried yet purposeful. For a split second, time seemed to stop. His heart pounded violently against his chest, and his breath caught in his throat. Everything in him whispered the same name, Tiolac. He did not hesitate. Instinct took over as he moved forward, weaving through strangers, his gaze locked onto her slender silhouette. The way she walked, the curve of her shoulders, even the quiet loneliness surrounding her, it all felt unmistakably hers. With every step he took, hope surged through him like electricity, drowning out the doubts he had learned to carry. This time felt different. This time he was certain. Tiolac, he whispered under his breath, as if saying her name aloud might make her disappear. The crowd thickened, forcing him to quicken his pace. People brushed past him, unaware that his entire world was racing ahead just a few meters away. His pulse roared in his ears, his thoughts scattered between disbelief and desperate longing. After so long, after countless empty searches, fate seemed to have finally answered him. Just as he reached out, the woman stopped. She turned slightly, enough for him to see her face clearly, and in that instant, hope shattered. She was not Tiolac. The resemblance had been cruel, almost merciless, but her eyes held no recognition, no familiar warmth. Confusion flickered across her face as she noticed his sudden stillness, the intensity of his gaze. She offered a polite, distant nod before turning away and disappearing back into the crowd. He stood frozen, unable to move, as the noise of the city rushed back into him like a wave. The silence inside him was unbearable. For a long moment he remained there, staring at the empty space she had left behind. His chest felt tight, as if something invisible had wrapped itself around his heart and refused to let go. He lowered his hand slowly, realizing he had been reaching for a future that was not there. Disappointment settled in quietly, heavier than anger or despair. He had grown accustomed to false hope, yet this one hurt more than the others. It had come too close, touched him too deeply. The certainty he had felt only seconds ago now mocked him, leaving behind a hollow ache that echoed through his entire being. He turned away and walked without direction, letting the streets guide him. Faces blurred together, sounds faded into distant echoes. Somewhere in the chaos of the city, life continued as usual, indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding within him. He wondered how many times fate would test him this way, how many illusions it would place in his path before granting him the truth. As evening fell, he found himself standing alone beneath a pale, fading sky. The city lights flickered on one by one, mirroring the quiet loneliness in his heart. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, forcing himself to steady the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I hope you're safe," he thought silently, "wherever you are." He no longer chased the crowd. Instead, he stood still, letting the moment pass. Perhaps Tiolac was somewhere far away, living a life completely separate from his own. Perhaps their reunion was not meant to happen yet, or perhaps fate was simply asking him to wait a little longer. Despite the pain of disappointment, his resolve did not break. If anything, it grew stronger, shaped by patience and quiet endurance. He understood now that searching for her wasn't just about finding her physical presence, it was about holding on to hope without losing himself. Under the same sky, separated by distance and circumstance, he sent her a silent wish, that she would find peace, that she would be protected from the world's cruelty, and that one day, when neither of them was looking, destiny would gently guide them back to each other. Until then, he would continue walking forward, not in desperation, but in faith, because love like his did not fade with disappointment. It waited.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Mí Tiểu Lạc Review. Vậy là câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay đã kết thúc tại đây. Trong câu chuyện hôm nay của chúng ta thì đã kể về nội dung đó chính là việc vị CEO đã đi tìm Tiểu Lạc, nhưng vị CEO vẫn chưa tìm thấy Tiểu Lạc. Trong quá trình đi tìm Tiểu Lạc thì trên đường vị CEO đã gặp một cô gái rất là giống với Tiểu Lạc. Vị CEO đã gọi cô gái và nhận nhầm cô gái là Tiểu Lạc. Trong khi đó Tiểu Lạc thì vẫn đang phải lao động rất là cật lực, vất vả để kiếm tiền trả nợ mẹ nuôi của cô, để cô có thể tự do, không phải bị mẹ nuôi của cô gắn nợ cho chồng cũ của cô nữa. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn về câu chuyện Tiểu Lạc và vị CEO sẽ được kể ở các video tiếp theo. Các bạn đừng quên bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh sẽ nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các câu chuyện sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Mí Tiểu Lạc Review nha. Và đặc biệt hãy nhớ like, share và để lại comment ở dưới video nhé. Mọi ý kiến đóng góp của các bạn sẽ được mình ghi nhận và cải thiện các nội dung mới hay hơn nữa trên kênh Mí Tiểu Lạc Review để phục vụ các khán giả tốt hơn nữa. Thanks for watching my video. Bye bye and see you soon. Please continue support my channel everyone.